Welcome to the Woodridge Baptist Church podcast. For more information about what's happening in the life of our church, visit our website at www.woodridge.org. Enjoy the podcast.
God is good. Wouldn't you agree? He's good. And as I was in Mark chapter 14 this week and preparing for this time with you, I kind of went back. I went back to when I was 11 years old in Mineola, Texas, just north of Tyler, for those of you that are wondering where that's at, and the time that I gave my life to the Lord. And a couple of things, you know, even back then as an 11-year-old, and I'll say it even now as a year-old, is two things that I have always felt. Just, it's never left me. How incredibly undeserving I am of Jesus. It's never left me. But also how incredibly grateful I am for Jesus. It's just never left me. And you know, when we get around Easter every year, there's for me there's these conflicted feelings. One, just immense gratitude for Jesus, and on the other hand, I can feel my part in why we even have to celebrate it. You know, just the weight of my own sin. It's just very, very real to me. And so for some years, there's just been this thing as I get into the Gospels and I get to the point where we're looking at, you know, Jesus's crucifixion. I don't want this lost on me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where you just kind of keep reading and you're like, yes, and he died. And it just kind of passes over you. And something that kind of hit me this week as I was studying was I wanted to take what we're doing in Mark chapter 14. We'll start in verse 53. But by the time we're done, this is what I want for all of us. I want you to be able to picture what Jesus went through that night. Like, I want you to have a picture in your mind of what our Jesus went through for us. And I don't want us to ever forget it. Like, never forget it. Couple of things. In the Roman world, here's kind of the way a day went. A day went from midnight to midnight. Now, however, if you were a Jewish person, the custom was it would go from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. the next day. Now, if you think about it, the nighttime hours were measured by what were called watches, the watches of the night. Jews and Romans did that differently. One had 3, the other had 4. But this was the big idea. Between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., the time was divided into 4 watches, and they were 3 hours apiece. So if you reckon, yes, I'm from Northeast Texas, if you reckon the time to the Jewish day, beginning at about 6 a.m., the 6th hour would be noon. Are y'all with me so far? So Matthew, for example, writes that at the 6th hour, darkness fell across the sky and cast a shadow until the 9th hour, which means it would be 3 in the afternoon. So I give you that because it's going to tie in here in just a little bit, but I want to give you a little bit more so that you can understand. You got to remember, Jesus and the disciples, they'd been in the upper room. They'd had the Last Supper together. Jesus had gone into Gethsemane where he prayed and the disciples slept. Not their best moment, but whatever. This is all going down around midnight or so. Then Judas shows up with a mob at about 1 in the morning. And this began a series of 6 different trials that Jesus was going to go through during that night. This is quite a night. The first took place at the residence of a guy named Annas. Now, for those of you that are note takers, here's a quick way to do it. Get your phone out and go click and take a picture of everything that I'm providing for you today. So the first took place at the residence of Annas. Now, Annas, typically, you got to understand, this guy didn't really have any clout anymore because he was a former high priest. There was somebody else that actually had the power. But you go before Annas, this is somewhere around 2 o'clock in the morning. And when they showed up with Jesus, Annas doesn't even have to be awakened. And that by itself should probably let you know something's up. Right? I mean, here it is, 2 in the morning. He's probably not a spring chicken anymore. He's got a little age on him. After all, he's retired, for goodness sakes, right? It's almost like they're expecting them to walk in with him. And his son-in-law, who's a guy named Caiaphas, many of you have heard of him, is there. So no conflict of interest. You got father-in-law and son-in-law, and these are the guys that are going to adjudicate the case of Jesus. I don't see any problem there. How about you? It's all going well. And during this meeting, Jesus is punched by a guard. This is the way that it all starts. There's already violence in the court, if you want to call it a court at all. But there was a second unofficial trial that was held at the home of Caiaphas. That's Annas' son-in-law. This happens roughly at about 3 in the morning. Now, they didn't have to go far. You have to understand the way that they would build their homes, like family, it was normal for example, like Wendy and I, like if we had our home, it wouldn't be unusual in the ancient Near East for our in-laws to be across a courtyard from us. So all you really had to do is kind of walk across the courtyard and it's your in-law's house. I'm not saying recommend it, I'm saying it's the way they did it, right? Some of you might like a little bit more space than that, whatever, I'll leave that up to you. But they cross over. They cross over. And it wasn't just him. There was a whole group of people waiting. Think about what Mark 14 says, starting in verse 53. Then they led Jesus away to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes assembled. What in the world? It's like they're all awake at this time of the night. Peter followed him at a distance right into the high priest's courtyard. He was sitting with the servants, warming himself by the fire. And the chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for testimony against Jesus, put him to death. But they couldn't find any. For many were giving false testimony against him, and the testimonies didn't even agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him, stating, "We heard him say, 'I'll destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days I'll build another one not made with hands.' But their testimony didn't agree on this." And then the high priest stood up before all of them and questioned Jesus. "Don't you have an answer to what these men are testifying against you?" I mean, if he was going to say something, he'd be like, testifying what? They're lying and they can't even agree with each other. He could have said that, but he didn't, which, by the way, is exactly what Isaiah 53 said. He would speak not a word. So he kept silent and he didn't answer. And again, the high priest questioned him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am." Jesus, now he answers, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." And then the high priest tore his robes and he said, "Why do we still need witnesses?" And the answer is because this is a trial, right? I mean, to ask it is to answer it. He says, "But you heard the blasphemy. What is your decision?" And they all condemned him as deserving death. And then some, they began to spit on him. They blindfolded him and they beat him, saying, "Prophesy." It's like, who hit you? And the temple servants also took him and they slapped him. So Jesus is taken to the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin are the 70 men that formed the high court of the Jews. The Gospels say that this happened when it was day. So this is probably somewhere around 6 or so in the morning. Now, because Jesus said he was the Son of God, they accused him of blasphemy, and they want to take him to a guy named Pilate. Here's the problem. Blasphemy is a religious issue. Pilate doesn't care. He doesn't care. You can take him and say, "Hey, this guy thinks he's God." And Pilate's going to be like, "Why do I care?" All he cares about is he getting in the way of Rome? Is he hindering the work of Rome? Is he telling people to stop giving, like rendering to Caesar what is supposed to be Caesar's? The answer is no. Why do I care about this guy? Y'all go on. But they have their idea, and so off they go. What they decide to do is to switch the charge. Instead of saying that it was going to be blasphemy, the way that they can get the Romans on the hook is to say he's treasonous. And now the Romans are going to pay some attention. And so he's taken to Pilate. Perhaps somewhere around 6:30, maybe around 7 in the morning, or as the Gospels say, when the morning had come. Now, Pilate, just so you know, he was the governor of Judea. He was absolutely brutal. He was a cruel human being. There's even one guy, some of you have heard of Caligula, by the way, not a decent human being either. But even Caligula wrote of Pilate, he said this. He said, "He is a man of notorious reputation, severe brutality, prejudice, savage violence, and murder." That's bad. I mean, when you've got like an Adolf Hitler going, "That guy's really bad," it's bad. And that's who Jesus is in front of. I mean, how bad was Pilate? Caligula later banishes him to Gaul. Now, some of you are like, where's that? I'm glad you asked. He banished him to the northwest side of Italy beyond the Alps. He wanted him that far gone from him. And that's who Jesus is in front of. It's not just that. Pilate was also under investigation by Rome. And so he knows that he's got to be really careful because Jesus could be a little bit of a firebrand. Crowds would rise up. People seem to really like him. And he goes on to ask Jesus this question in Mark 15. Are you the king of the Jews? Now, the reason that he asked this is because he's using a word here that's pretty much a loaded word, the word king. Are you the king of the Jews? And even though Jesus answered yes, Pilate goes on to say this, I just don't see the problem with this guy. I mean, you're looking for fault, but there's just nothing there. And in a most interesting chat between Jesus and Pilate, which was somewhat removed from the crowd, because Pilate's like, hey, come over here. Let's talk. This is what he says. He says, you're the one saying that I'm a king. This is why I was born. It's why I came into the world, which was to tell the truth. And anyone who belongs to the truth will listen to me. And then Pilate answers like this, what is the truth? Like, what is the truth? And even after a private meeting, Pilate goes out, he's met with them, he walks out to the crowd and he goes, I don't get it, guys. There's no fault in him. He's innocent. Y'all just need to move on. But Pilate's in a tough spot. If you think about it, riots could break out in Jerusalem. He's already under the watch of Rome. If he lets Jesus go, this crowd could incite more violence. And the Romans aren't going to like that. And so Pilate's sitting there going, all right, I've got to get an out. Like, what's the win here for me? And he finds one. Jesus is from Galilee. And so here's what he does. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a territorial issue here. Proper justice and whatnot. We can't try him in Harris County. He's got to be tried in Montgomery County. It would be something like that. So he thinks he's got his out. And so he sends them to a guy named Herod. Now, Herod is in the area because it's Passover. Everybody is descending into the area. He's in Jerusalem at that time. So his name is Herod Antipas, and he's a tetrarch in Galilee. So he's got some pull. And Pilate's like, this is great because now I hand it over to Herod. Herod will do some stuff because this is the same Herod that had John the Baptist beheaded. So he's not worried about whether or not, if it's going to upset a crowd, I don't care. We'll chop heads off. It's that guy. So he's like, we've got this figured out. But here's what happens. Look at Luke 23, or listen. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. In other words, he had heard about all the miracles of Jesus, and he was like, I want to watch one of those for myself. This is why he was wanting to meet him. And so he plied him with many questions, but Jesus didn't give him an answer. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law, they were standing there vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers, they ridiculed and they mocked him. They dressed him in an elegant robe and they sent him back to Pilate. Y'all want to know what Pilate's feeling right now? That's why I sent him to you, is for you to deal with him. But here was the thing. Luke goes on to say this. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. Now they have a common person. So basically, he's wanting to have a show put on. Jesus wasn't in a show kind of mood. And when he didn't get it, he decides to mock him in how he dresses him, and he sends him back. So now he's back before Pilate. Pilate is sitting there going, all right, that didn't work. I need to think of another out. Like, what's the other way? Because didn't happen. And there was one. He's a pretty creative guy. And you see it in Matthew 27. Now, it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. And at that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, well, which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who's called the Messiah? For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. And while Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I've suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. I'm going to be honest with you, friends. I'm starting to feel for Pilate a little bit. I mean, at least a little bit. He's a horrible human being, but my gosh. So he wants to send him to Herod so that Herod will render a decision. That doesn't happen. He goes back to Pilate. While Pilate is sitting there going, all right, I've got to make a judgment on the matter, he gets a message from his wife: don't do anything to this guy. On his other side, he's got the crowd going, this guy needs to die. Think about it. There is no win for him. If he's going to please the crowd, he's still got to go home to his wife. That's not going to go well. Y'all with me? Now, if he pleases the wife, guess what? He's going to walk back out and he's going to have a really ticked off crowd of people. That's not good either. So if you're Pilate, I'm like, what's the win? Like, what's the win? And so by 8 a.m., think about this. By 8 in the morning, Jesus has undergone 6 trials by 8 in the morning. And by 9 a.m., which is also called the 3rd hour, Jesus is on his way of suffering. From being scourged with a cat of 9 tails to being nailed to a cross. That's a long night. Wouldn't you agree with me? I mean, that's a lot. And in a very short amount of time. And the way the Gospels go on, it says at noon, darkness falls over the earth as he hangs on the cross, and by 3 p.m., he takes his last breath. He's done. I want to give you a little bit of insight into what happened that night, because the whole thing was a mockery of justice. All of it. I just need to show you. What were some of the rules that were supposed to govern their judicial system? Let's see how they did. We're going to grade them this morning. Are y'all ready? A trial was never supposed to happen at night. The first 2, by the way, were in the dead of night. Second, the accused was allowed to have an attorney. Jesus was never provided a defense. The accused could not be declared guilty without reputable witnesses. Those that accused Jesus were both lying and they couldn't even agree with each other. Jesus was declared guilty even though he certainly was not proven guilty. Even Pilate said, I just can't find any fault in this guy. I mean, I get y'all are worked up. I just can't find any fault in this guy. Skip Rome. Let's think about the Jews on the other side. They followed the Mosaic law, which they interpreted from what was called the Talmud. And the Talmud is what was supposed to set the boundaries for the way that the law was supposed to be met out. And when it came to a person's life, there was supposed to be no gray areas. If there was a gray area, you erred on the side of caution, because life is precious and it's valuable. They're going to live. They're going to live. So they believed in capital punishment, but no gray areas. Are y'all with me? How'd they do? Well, some of the things that were supposed to guide them. No testimony for capital punishment during hours of darkness. But they're the ones that set up the trials during darkness. They were not permitted to give an immediate verdict. What they were supposed to do, they were supposed to adjourn. They were supposed to go home. They were supposed to be in their homes for 2 days. They were supposed to eat very lightly, almost like a slight fast. They were supposed to pray, and they were supposed to sleep really well. Because what they believed in all of this is that between the fasting and the praying, but also the rest, you were going to make a better judgment than you were if you just made one like this. So for 2 days, they're supposed to go home. I think they forgot that part. But only after that they could vote. But there was a way that the votes were supposed to go. You remember the Sanhedrin was waiting for Jesus to show up. They were supposed to vote one at a time. Do I have any fans of Survivor out there? You know what I'm talking about, the show Survivor? You know, you have like the whole show, and then they go and then they write a name down. It's supposed to work basically like that, but even more specifically, because the youngest members of the Sanhedrin were supposed to vote first, and the older members of the Sanhedrin were supposed to vote last. That way, nobody was influencing the decision that was in front of them when the vote came down. But when you think about it, none of this was happening. None of it was happening. And when you think about the Jews, they weren't under Roman law. They weren't allowed to execute anybody. And if a Jew was going to execute somebody, they were going to do it by stoning. That's the way they did it, not by crucifixion. Crucifixion was the game of the Romans. It was not the game of the Jews. This is quite a night. But I have some thoughts, just some things that kind of struck me this week as I was pouring back through this. And the first thing that kind of hit me was about Jesus. And I think there's something that we can take from him. Jesus was determined to finish his race. He was determined to finish his race. Think of what Hebrews 12:3 says about him. It says, "Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." He says, consider him. He didn't stop. He didn't stop. He was determined to finish the race. But it wasn't just that. It's the way that he was determined to finish the race was that he was going to continue his witness in the way he handled himself in the midst of a lot of injustice. How many of you have experienced any injustice lately? Can I see your hands? I mean, welcome to a messed up world. And you're probably sitting there going, yeah. But I feel pretty safe about this. None of you have been nailed to a cross. I do feel safe in saying that. Injustice, yes. Like this, I'm going to go with no. He continued his witness. Think of what 1 Peter 1:7 says. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise and glory and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. It's not just that you finish your race, it's how you finish your race. But I also think of this other example from Jesus. Gotta admit, I've got to work on this one. After a mock trial, after being beaten, later hanging on a cross, his first words after the cross was set in the ground were words of forgiveness. Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. And that's while they're sitting at his feet and casting lots for his clothes and his stuff. He's saying, Father, forgive them. In Ephesians 4:32, Paul says, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Just like that. I'm going to admit, that's a tough one. How do y'all feel? Is that easy? It might not be easy, but it's the only way forward. It's the only way forward. When somebody wrongs you, and I'm not asking you to be a doormat for anybody, I'm not asking that. But the only way forward is that there's forgiveness. There's no other way. But even with all that going on, I want to go back. I want to go back in the night. And when I think about a guy named Peter, think about what Mark says. It says, while Peter was in the courtyard below, one of the high priest's maidservants came, and when she saw Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, oh, you were with Jesus, the man from Nazareth, but he denied it. I don't know or understand what you're talking about. Then he went out to the entryway, and a rooster crowed. And when the maidservant saw him again, she began to tell those standing nearby, this man's one of them. But again, he denied it. And after a little while, those standing there said to Peter again, "You are one of them, since you are also a Galilean." Most think it's because he probably had a Galilean accent. I'm from Northeast Texas. We've got accents, right? Like, you're not from this area, but that is a Galilean drawl. We know that you were one of the guys. But then he started to curse and swear, "I don't know the man that you're talking about." And immediately a rooster crowed a second time, and Peter remembered that when Jesus had spoken the word to him, "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and he wept. He just wept. Some scholars think that it's not actually a rooster that crows, just so you know. Do you remember how we started this? That they're the watches of the night. They're different shifts of the guard, so to speak. What some scholars think is that with the shift in the guard, you might hear something like a trumpet blast. And then you would know that there was a changing of the guard. It might be something like that. But this is the thing, because Luke adds a detail with what happened to Peter. Right after all of this, in Luke 22, it says, "The Lord turned and he looked at Peter. And then Peter remembered the word of the Lord and how he had said to him, 'Before the rooster crows today, you'll deny me 3 times.'" We do not know where Jesus was standing. And we're not sure. But wherever it was, he had a clear angle to Peter. And I wonder what the look was like. Like he looked him in the face. I had a couple of thoughts. One was, "Told you so." I don't think that's it, but that crossed my mind because that might be what I would do. It could be a look like he looks over and he sees Peter sees his face and he sees surprise on Jesus' face. I don't think that's it either. Peter, yeah, he's already predicted this. I don't think he's surprised at all. I don't think that's what's going on. I think he just was hurt. I think he just looks. Peter looks, straight line of shot to the face of Jesus. He's just hurt. Would you be? I mean, would you be? But then it got me thinking. I have never in my life denied Jesus like that. I've just done it other ways. I've just done it other ways. And I think that when I've made those choices, that if I had a straight line of sight to the face of Jesus, I think it would probably look just the same. Like, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. But I want you to see something in this for Peter from Jesus before all this goes down. In Luke 22, before this huge failure, Jesus was talking with Peter and he said this to them. He said, "I have prayed that your faith will not fail. I've prayed that your faith will not fail." And I think he's praying that kind of victory over us too. He wants that for us. But it's not just that. Let's go beyond the failure, because that's a big one. He predicted his restoration. Because right after saying, "I have prayed that your faith will not fail," he says this to Peter. He says, "When you have repented, when you have repented and turned to me again, strengthen and build up your brothers." It's like not your best moment. Massive failure. You're not done. You're not done. Some of you, I want you to think about this with me, okay? I have watched this over the years, where people have a massive spiritual collapse in their life. It might be infidelity. It might be a long history of drug addiction, and they feel like failure upon failure. I mean, I've seen it practically all over the years after 28 or pushing 29 years of ministry. I've seen a lot of stuff. One of the things that I have also seen is I have watched people after a failure run away. Just run. That is not what Jesus wants. That is not it. If you're running, he wants you to run back, not away. He wants you to run back. He wants to say to you this morning the same thing that he was trying to encourage Peter with before a huge mistake. When you've repented, strengthen and build up your brothers. Strengthen and build up your brothers. For some, today is supposed to be a day of restoration. It's the day of coming back. I mean, how's the running been doing for you anyway? I'm going to guess not great. But you can have a story like this because I think Peter's story is for you. I think it's for you. I just want to give you a time to respond. Do you see the graciousness of God? Do you see the goodness of God? I'll be honest with you. I never am quite sure how to say thank you to Jesus. Like it never feels like enough. Do you know what I mean? Just never. I love it. I heard this example some years ago. It's like, imagine that you're at Starbucks or wherever you buy $4 coffee, 5, 6, 7. I know some of you people. I've seen you. So you're there, you're getting your fancy coffee and whatnot. All right, so imagine I'm at Starbucks and like somebody buys me a coffee. You know, I might walk up and be like, oh my gosh, I mean, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that. And I do. I really appreciate that. It seems like a thank you is probably enough. Is that fair? Like, I don't need to come mow your yard. It seems like a thank you might be enough. Is that good? What's the thank you for somebody that dies for you? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But he did. He did. And I have a couple of choices here that I can make. So I'm in the same boat as you guys. The choice that I can make is this. I can lean into the restoration and healing that Jesus wants for me right now. But I have to call my mistake what it was. Because after all, he looked at Peter and he says, and when you repent. It's like, Peter, you got to call it, man. You got to call it. Maybe this morning it's time to call it. I mean, the only one you're fooling is yourself anyway. You're not fooling him. It can be a moment of healing and restoration. And you can get back to the good work that the Lord wants for you. You don't have to run anymore. You're free from it. Free from it.
We hope you have enjoyed the podcast. For more information about our church, visit www.woodridge.org.